first order problem for the country that here you have a situation where you have got so much talent that we are, in fact, in Bangalore where I live, we are probably building products for most companies in most countries around the world, so why can't we build products for India? Second, we have such a large home market. In fact, I was at a conference last week in some think tank where it's a matter of shame, but we say it proudly that we are the largest importer of defense gear in the world. And electronics is about 30 to 40% of defense. So again, we are the largest importer of defense, largest importer of telecom, largest importer of everything in electronics. So why can't we build stuff ourselves? And then, if you really see electronic manufacturing is also touches upon one other aspect of job creation. If you have to create large amount of jobs, you have to have manufacturing. And the fact that we don't manufacture anything in electronics much in India today is also a matter of concern. So in one sense, making ICT products in India is a first order problem for the country. It's an opportunity because the amount of talent we have available today and the way the world is going in terms of innovation and technology, this is really an opportunity for India. Because two things have changed the game in terms of why we should and have many product companies from India. Number one, I talked about is home market. You need to talk to a lot of customers, and all the problems, all the challenges that we'll face in India will present a very unique set of problems. For example, for Digital India, how do you build a device or an application or a product with a very high quality because the ruggedness and the use case has to be very easy. It has to be very low cost because it has to be very affordable. And if you can solve that problem for India, there's another 3 times bigger market around the world in all the other emerging markets, whether it's in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and so on. So I think so here's a situation where solving the problem first in India is actually an advantage versus the other way around when you had to be in the Silicon Valley to solve a problem for the West and then try to bring it to India. So I think this is another reason why it is starting to become very interesting. So with the internet and all the standardization which is happening in the world, there's a GSM phone is a GSM phone, a smartphone, an Android phone is an Android phone. And suddenly you see so many people can kind of come into the game. So what it really means is that once you have standardization, once you have internet, which makes available information anywhere, I don't think there's any handicap for anybody in India to say that, can I build a world-class product sitting in India? Can I be the leader in innovation sitting from India? It is absolutely possible. In fact, there's a subtle and a very strong advantage we have from India, which we never had before. And this advantage was exploited in a very positive way by the IT services industry. So something that you could do for $100 in the US, you could do it for $20 or $25 in India. So there was this cost arbitrage, which of course led to a lot of efficiencies and innovation. Now think about it and you say, I'm going to make this as an innovation leverage. So I can have 4 times more R&D, 4 times more innovation. I can make more mistakes for the same dollar if I have to take risk in terms of building products from India. Because we have talent, we have market, we have the capability to do this, not too many countries in the world have. And this is what I would say should become the DNA for the next generation of ICT product growth from India, which is really take the design-led approach to manufacturing rather than the manufacturing-led approach to manufacturing. And what I mean by that is if you see how China evolved the whole high-tech sector, they started at the bottom of the pyramid. They did the low-end stuff, then they built up capabilities upwards, gradual things. I don't think we need to follow the same model. We should leapfrog. We should say, we're going to take the design end of the problem to start off with. So we'll use innovation, we'll create the hardware, the software, the systems, the algorithms, whatever. And maybe the physical manufacturing, which probably adds 20 to 30%, we will do it later. The benefit being is you can quickly capture a large part of the value chain, which is where our sweet spot for the country is, and really become a leader in this game rather than being a follower. So I think this is another reason why I think there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation and product development across technologies. When we'll have 2.5 lakh villages connected on optical fiber and networking and mobile, there's tons and tons of applications which are needed, whether in software or in hardware and so on. And I think this is an opportunity which we absolutely should take advantage of. The second topic I want to touch upon is, why aren't there too many product companies from India in the ICT sector? And I can tell you that, having gone through the whole journey in the last 13, 14 years, it's a very tough game. And the reason it is because electronics product, or for that matter, most manufacturing, is an economy of scale issue. It's a chicken and egg problem. Unless you get high volumes, you don't get the cost, and vice versa. You can have the most efficiently designed product, but you've got to get to scale. So I think by having a home market, especially in a B2B business where government itself is a large buyer. There are a whole set of new policies which have come into place, which really encourage that if you design and manufacture a local product, you will have an advantage compared to imports. So I think the market access is a big problem that I think is heading in the right direction with the new set of policies which are implemented. The second problem, which is probably common across all the manufacturing sector, is the cost of money, both in terms of early stage funding, in terms of R&D, in terms of entrepreneurship level funding, where too much of money still is going into services and now a lot more into the e-commerce, but not enough money still going into building the products which are much more high risk in terms of doing the technology and so on. And then the last part, I think, is how do we take this success in India and scale it globally? I think India has got a phenomenal brand in terms of a great place to do IT services. People from India are respected around the world. But what about Indian products? I don't think we have the brand equity still established in terms of here's a product from India, here's a company from India, here's the stuff from India which we can really trust and do that. And I think that's a country level selling across sectors that we got to do. So these are the kind of the challenges which have to be solved. And by the way, I intentionally did not mention people and talent and technology. I think that's a solvable problem. I don't think we should get too much hung up about where are we going to get technology. I think there's enough talent in the country that we can by and large build whatever, from electronics to ships to airplanes. It's just a question of putting the focus and time and money, and things will happen. So this is really where I thought is the second stage in terms of second part of my talk, where what are the challenges. And the last part I just wanted to talk about is, since this is a BIT conclave and I have grown as an entrepreneur all my life, is there are a few things which I thought, if I just put things in perspective, what I learned at BIT, which really I think are very essential ingredients to be an entrepreneur and succeed in that. And the number one I thought was what BIT teaches you is networking skills. I think the kind of relationships we had in the college and afterwards, I really believe that that's one thing which comes very handy, and I think that's something which all BITians are generally very good at. The second one I think is survival instincts. A lot of us were not from Bihar. So when we went into Bihar, and actually the first year of my college, there was a fight between the BITians and the tribals, and there were tir kaman and everything else happened. We ran for about 3 kilometers to save our lives. If you could save our lives then, no problem is tough. Trust me for that, And the last part of it is, as an entrepreneur, what you realize is you always chase something, right? And similarly in BIT, we chase that we'll graduate, we'll probably get good grades and all that stuff. But what I really appreciated, and I actually had the opportunity to go back to BIT last year as one of the alumni talk series, is that the journey is really more important than the end. So I think the time that we spent in BIT, the 4 or 5 years that we were there, some of us were 4, I know some of you were 5, not for taking one more year, because it was actually 5 years then. But I think the journey is really important, and that's really what it teaches you when you're an entrepreneur, that you always have the next target, the next thing, but you got to enjoy the whole journey as you go along, and that's really what I really appreciated. So again, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and I really enjoyed meeting all of you, and I hope something that I said could be useful to all of you. Thanks again.
Thank you. I remember when I joined Indian Oil way back in 1980, and I was initially posted in a department called instrumentation, which used to handle the process instrumentation part of refinery operations. So initially, all our instrumentation used to come from Russia, and later on from America. And we had to really invest large sums of money keeping inventories of spares, because the entire maintenance was done in-house. Now, if something could be manufactured in India, and we was always used to wonder, why this can't be manufactured in India, whether turnaround will be very quick and we don't have to spend, many of those spares were never used because the instrumentation was so rugged, it used to last for years. So those, the entire investment was infructuous. So yes, manufacturing in India will not only be beneficial for the country, but it will also be beneficial for users like us. Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Jagdish Mitra.
Good afternoon. All of the speakers on the table are people who could have probably easily ragged me. They were seniors to me in college. But some interesting point, I thought when you talked about learning from BIT and the survival instinct, because being a Bengali but born and brought up in Bihar, I didn't have the Bihar problem because I'm a Bihari at heart. But the survival instinct was taught in many ways, and the technology was taught to me in our canteen, because if you could eat that food, then you can survive anywhere. And the technology was taught to us that the chapatis were latest rubber technology anyway. So, we learned it the hard way there. You couldn't have gone through a session, I thought, without going through PowerPoint, and mine's got some PowerPoints. I don't know whether that's coming up or not. Yeah, so I'll just sort of round it up with a few thoughts on what the future holds for us. We've obviously achieved a lot in the IT industry in India, and extremely proud of it for having such leaders as Ganesh and those on the panel here who've brought this to this success. I think the challenges are multifold as we go into the next generation. And I think a little bit of it was touched about by the product part of the business. But I think it needs a lot more than product to make ourselves really the bellwether or the successful IT services or IT leadership that India can show. And a large part of it is about trying to do things for what the opportunity itself in India holds. Because mind you, a large amount of our businesses in Indian IT services companies is all about selling abroad. And the biggest consumption of IT, I'm hoping, is going to be in India in the next 5 to 7 years, about how to automate and how to bring technology in every aspect of our lives. So obviously a lot of you know this. It's a huge amount of numbers that Ganesh also touched upon. A lot of people talked about what are the numbers that we have here in terms of number of employment, businesses that it has created. It's the biggest IT capital. You've heard the term Bangalore. So every aspect of our business has been world renowned, and I think we should be extremely, extremely proud of it, because from an Indian IT leadership perspective, for all the threat that we have heard from Eastern Europe or from South America or from China in terms of cost leadership, it hasn't worked the way we have grown in our businesses here. If you look at the revenues and the way it's grown kind of in terms of numbers across the board, and BPM is another number for ITES, BPO, whatever you want to call it. That's the kind of numbers that we've actually grown. And it is now at $100 billion mark in terms of after about 15 years of doing this business, right? So from a large perspective, this business has grown significantly for India, and significantly for the jobs, and significantly for creating opportunities for people like us. But what is in the future? I think a lot of the people touched upon it. Ganesh talked about bimodal IT. Prabhu talked about education systems. And then we talked about product-led thinking. Yeah? And all of this, I think, combines together as we start to look at what's going to happen in the world. So if you look at the worldwide snapshot, the global IT services industry obviously holds a significant opportunity for us. We are still a very small portion of the opportunity of the estimated US billion numbers that we have for 2017 and the number of growth. And if you look at the size of the worldwide software industry itself, it's a significant number which we don't touch upon. And it's an increase of about 4.8% over year on year on that kind of a huge number. So every business, every aspect of business is getting touched upon by IT and technology, and plays a much more significant role. So when someone talks about bimodal IT, to me, I think it's not about making the CIO's role insignificant, but it's about merging the role of the CIO to make him more business-oriented. So a discussion today or a buying today is not an IT company selling, is no longer done with the CIO only, but it's done with the CIO and the business owner together, because both of them need to understand what the impact of that will be and make a decision jointly on what business values a solution can bring together. So a large amount of if you look at whether Gartner or Forrester or any of these guys, a large amount of the decision making is shifting towards other CXOs in a combined manner with the CIO. What is happening of the future of IT in India? We have been lucky to be a part of one of the largest IT consolidations in India with the acquisition of Satyam. And I think there will be more and more of that as we start to see product companies trying to acquire other people to start to build that capability. I think services company in itself will have to bring in a different type of DNA. We bought 2 years back Comviva from Bharti Airtel only to start the DNA of a product company, because those are two different DNAs. And I think they don't work together if you try and force them to work together. The services companies have a different mindset, and they're perfectly valid in that mindset. And the product companies have a different mindset, and they have to have a different DNA to work with it. As you heard, that it's a very tough game. It's a very tough game. It's a tough game not just in electronics, but any software product as well, to be able to scale and to be able to make sure that your product is marketed, and to bring the thought process here. And like we all know, it's not a question of talent, because if you look at the NASA or the IBM or any of the Oracles of the world, or even Facebooks of the world or Googles of the world, a significant portion of those guys are people from this origin, people who have graduated from engineering schools here. So the challenge is not that. The challenge is in creating the ecosystem of ensuring that people are taking those challenges. So when Ganesh, you talked about someone joining Facebook and rather people joining Tejas networks, that's an amazingly good change for us as a company, as a country, because we're going to move towards people who see product as a future. We're going out towards what are the future challenges and opportunities therefore. I think there's significant complexity that's going to come into technology. It's while the end user sees it very simple, at the back end of Facebook will need to have huge amount of analytics, and therefore be able to tell you at which point, like Internet of Things that was discussed earlier about Singapore, similarly about analytics deciding and being able to tell the seller what to sell, at which point, contextual, right now and right then when the buyer was ready to buy. Those are things that are extremely complex at the back end, though makes life extremely simple at the front end. When you go to a Facebook and it opts out a different set of options for you, or when you go out towards making sure that on anything like Google, in terms of how the search can be targeted towards what your preferences are. It's not far off to decide that today, I was just telling someone, the Fab 4 that we used to talk about, which is the Big 4, which is the ENYs and the consulting companies like the Deloittes and so on and so forth, have been changed by the technology world in the future to what they call as the Fab 5. The Fab 5 are the Facebook, the Google, Apple, Skype, and Amazon. These are 5 companies which are defining the way we communicate and the way we are actually going to change. How many of these are going to come out of India? What are the digital demands of India that we can talk about? And that's where I think the future lies. Finally, I think it has to be a significant change in the way we do lead businesses in this country, and especially in IT. We still have a fairly, though I think IT companies are very different compared to brick and mortar setups, but IT companies still have a hierarchical structure. Still we do the talent pooling in the way we go to graduate engineering schools and pick up the best talent that we can do. We pay them on the basis of whether they are from IITs or BIT Mesras or so and so forth, in terms of the hierarchy as they feel. We have to change that mindset to be a lot more universal. The thought process of acquiring talent will not be limited to someone who's got a BTech degree. Someone who can actually create an application, can bring an innovative idea, and can actually change the way the thinking is, can be a regular college dropout, or just be a technology geek. And it's going to happen because people's access to technology is no longer limited by the choices that they had earlier. So I think the leadership will also need to change accordingly towards making it